Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
Welcome back, everybody, to Crosstabs. This is episode 4. My name is Reagan Knope. I'm here with Brian Iverson. Brian, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm wonderful, Reagan. I'm excited to do this episode. I'm excited that primaries are almost over at this point. They are, how can I say this? I dragged on my comment there. I love them and hate them all at the same time. I love the idea of discussing policy within a vacuum of the Republican Party, right? So I love that idea of two candidates that might have a different view about how they go about doing their world. And then also we get into the same old of dirty politics and everybody wants to win, right? So, like, yeah, well, you suck. Well, you suck worse. And I think it's really that part of it's kind of the hard part of it, of the primaries, because it's kind of like fighting with your sister or your brother, where ultimately you're in the same family, but sometimes it's almost easier to fight with those people. So that makes it really hard, but I'm glad it's almost over.
I think the voters who are receiving all that voter contact are probably pretty excited for the election to be over as well. Don't worry. We will preview the election results. We just can't yet because we don't have them yet. We know that Oregon Democrats have the election results. Yeah. They'll release them soon, but we don't have them yet. They wait for election day for us.
I put in a request to see if we could find out who won since we were recording today, and they didn't return my calls. I don't know what's going on. I think they're too busy counting who won.
Public records requests take a long time, Brian. You know that. So we are going to save that for the next episode. We'll record. We'll have a couple days to really look at the results and give people a better in-depth analysis. Brian, is the truth there. We could certainly record on election night at 2 a.m. And tell you which races are close, but we can't tell you what's going to happen. So we're going to wait a couple of days and get you that information, but don't worry, we're going to cover it. Speaking of my farm where I have chickens that lay eggs, I have some egg on my face, Brian. In episode 2, I misspoke. We were talking about John Masterman and Andrew Morrison in the Republican primary for House District 48, and I was talking about Andrew Morrison's endorsements. I said that he didn't have right to life, and that is true, but I said Masterman instead of Morrison, and that created some confusion. So I just want to clear that up right now. John Masterman is endorsed by Oregon Right to Life PAC in that primary. Andrew Morrison is not. So hopefully I got it right that time, but the listeners will let us know, Brian. But we like to be accurate on this podcast.
So the real question is, was it Morrison wanted to make sure that he knows that he wasn't endorsed by Right to Life? Or was it Masterman making sure? I'm not sure. I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on who wanted the clarification. I love that part. I got a few emails from some people too in regards to, I'm wrong or I'm stupid or whatever, because we're making predictions, right? We don't know how things are going to turn out. We just try to report the best that we can at the time. I think occasionally when you and I are going back and forth and riffing, I think we definitely use names maybe without interchanging where we probably should. But when we're doing endorsements, we'll have to make sure we are very clear about who got what endorsement, because that does matter, especially Right to Life.
Absolutely, Brian. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, Brian, was one thing that we can see, even though we can't see the election results, we can see voter turnout. And it's horrendous, Brian, everywhere. It's terrible, low turnout. I'm looking at this tweet that I will link in our beautiful show notes that I do after the episode. And this tweet is from John Horvick. He's at Horvick on Twitter/X. And he's talking about turnout in Oregon. Okay, so here's the turnout in the primary. 13% as of today. Well, do we know if that's good or bad? It's a low number, but it's early. Average turnout at this time, 24%. So 11 point difference there. Why aren't people excited to vote in the primary, Brian? Do you have any theories?
Well, the presidential race is drawing nobody to in Oregon to pick up their ballot and turn it in. I mean, nobody, and there's very few people that are excited about a Trump v. Biden rematch. We knew that going into the season, right? That just wasn't what people were looking forward to. As much as they might love Trump, they weren't really looking forward to a Trump versus Biden, and the other way around. They may love Biden, but they weren't looking forward to having Trump on the ticket. So I think everybody's looking forward to something fresh. The key is you're going to have to wait 4 years for that. So we will have two new fresh candidates for sure in 4 years, which I think will drive a really interesting primary for us in 4 years. So stay tuned for 2028. Our numbers are going to rebound.
Well said, Brian. So the next question I want to talk to you about, there's been a lot of activity in this primary, and sometimes a political action committee comes up, and maybe not everybody quite understands how our state system works with political action committees, and then what they can do, what they can't do, and then all kinds of accusations about fake political action committees, dark money that's reported publicly on a website available to the public. All these terms, I think, that get thrown around kind of loosely, Brian. I think we got to, rein it in here and help our listeners understand what's the political speak that people are using to try to sway voters their direction, and what's true about our system of PACs, which are short for, it's an acronym for political action committees.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really good topic, Greg. And I think when most people think about PACs, they think of just like a candidate PAC, right? If I give money to, somebody running for office, it's the friends of, Joe Blow, PAC. And that makes sense. And that person has to go out and raise money so they can put a mailer in the mail and they can do digital ads on Facebook and talk to their people. So outside of like the candidate PACs, which were pretty normal, we have unlimited donations in Oregon right now for candidate PACs. So if Phil Knight wants to give $1 million to somebody, he can. It doesn't matter at all, but he has to go on the ORSTAR database Secretary of State manages, and it's public record. Everybody gets to see it. And there's a reporting period, there's a time frame, and that's the same. So now you have business PACs, which, for instance, you could have the Oregon Right to Life has a PAC. And so that PAC collects money for the organization. And Oregon Right to Life probably is a 501c3 nonprofit, and then creates a separate PAC that does candidate PACs and those sort of things. So when you have an organization that's a 501c3, they can't give donations or be involved politically. So they create these separate political action committees who then support candidates who believe in their issues. The unions are the same way. There's both sides of the aisle have, unions they have way more PACs than we do. For instance, I mean, that's the reality of it. And so then you have the other stuff. When you start getting into people that say aren't attached to the legislature, for instance, like if you were Oregon Right to Life, that probably does lobbying inside the building, or unions that lobby inside the building, they hire lobbyists and all that sort of stuff. You have these other people that don't really lobby, but they have PACs and they like to play in the political arena only. Even within our field, Bring Balance to Salem PAC, which is one that Congressman Greg Walden started when he was not a congressman anymore. And he's the one that's been getting the dollars from Phil Knight and timber companies and other folks saying, hey, we need balance in Salem. So I'm not worried about what happens in the building on legislative stuff. I'm just going to focus on the campaigns. And that's where Greg has done that. And there's also a bunch of other PACs out there on the left side that do this as well of the ledger. So not them. And then, so that's kind of that other group of political action committees that we see out there. And then you have this dark money. And what dark money is, and just to give you a quick thing about dark money, it's called 501c4s. And that IRS code is basically a code that allows somebody to start an educational PAC. They can do voter education, they can do voter ID, they can do voter registration, they can do things like that And voter education is a very loose term. So these loose terms are, I want to educate you on how great a certain senator is on a bill. So they don't have to be so that you don't really know where that dark money comes from. So it kind of hides, and they don't have to report who their donors are. So that's why it's called dark money, right? There's no light on it. So Oregon has a pretty decent system right now. I think I believe our campaign finance reform package that we just went through, that's going to come out in 2027, I believe is probably going to get another change to it in the long session. I think it's a good start. I don't think it's the best thing yet, but it's better than I've seen in other states. So I do believe we need some sort of campaign finance reform. But I think the more public money that people can see the flow of dollars, the better off things are. And that's kind of my quick riff on kind of our campaign finance and where the lay of the land sits today.
Brian, you talk about the systems, you talk about the strategies, but you mostly focused on people who use it the way it's supposed to be used, right? People who really care about a particular issue, working on that issue. And the only way to get stuff done is to elect the people that believe the same things you do. That's why everybody says, oh, such and such person is bought. And I'm like, well, are they bought, or did they already believe the things that donor wanted them to believe, right? And I'd say in most cases, the candidate already believes what the donor supports, right? It seems rare to me that the donor's picking up a phone and be like, hey, can you change your view on this issue? Now, a lot of education happens. Maybe you didn't know that mattered to a certain group. You didn't know that this was a farm issue. And then the Farm Bureau calls you and you're like, hey, we care about this. And you go, oh, I didn't know. And now you have new information. So I think that gets conjured up in there. But I think that there are also people who try to abuse the PAC system, try to create confusion, try to, use it to tell lies. Do you have experience with that, Brian? Are there people that are using and abusing the system? You don't have to use names. You don't have to out anybody if you don't want to. But, are there, in your experience, what does that look like?
Oh, you mean like Oregon Firearms Federation? I would be more than happy to talk about Oregon Firearms Federation, Reagan. I think that he also has a dark money 501c4 organization, and Kevin Starrett and that group used to be more engaged in the candidate side of things. They used to be engaged in helping find good legislation and doing stuff. But I would say since maybe 2019, 2020, it seems like all he does is sit in his basement and pound things on his keyboard and say how shitty Republicans are, and then ask for money. And we don't know where that money goes, because that money basically doesn't go to candidates to help them win races. He gives maybe a couple of $1,000. But I do know in 2020, I pulled up some examples. In 2021, he systematically drained his PAC of over $200,000. That money that he got from people across the state saying he was going to help elect Republicans, gun-toting Republicans, and he really didn't. And all he did was send $200,000 into his private off group, which is now dark. We have no idea where that went to. I don't know. And the PAC itself is controlled by him and his wife. Nobody else. There's not one other director on it, not one other person, just him and himself. And then all he does since then is blast every single Republican for anything he can find, because guess what? That raises money. More money than it does to actually blast Democrats, who actually are the gun grabbers, not the Republicans. But when you blast Democrats, Republicans out there, donors, they are like, oh, well, we already know the Democrats want all the guns. So that doesn't raise any money. What raises money is if he just goes after Republicans. So it doesn't matter who the leader is. It doesn't matter what it is. If he finds a bill out there, and any Republican that says anything good about it, he's just going to attack you, send out a bunch of emails to this database that he's built up over the years, and raise money. And then I don't know where it goes after that, Reagan. It truly is amazing to me. And it's just lazy. And he just loves to just blast people. And the last thing I'll say is, so Measure 114, the gun bill that we had in 2022, that you would think was every gun group's 9/11. Like it was, the world's coming to an end. We got to stop Measure 114. Of all the money that Kevin Starrett in office ever raised, guess how much they spent trying to defeat Measure 114? 30 grand. $30,000. That is it. He had plenty of money in his pack, still does, but has only spent 30 grand to try to defeat one of the worst gun bills that he proclaimed that's ever come through Oregon. That's it. No, like, let me put a fundraising team together. Let's get a coalition like they did when they defeated Measure 97, the grocery sales tax. Like they got all the people together. There wasn't a call to legislators saying, we need to figure this out. I've got this group. I'm throwing in 30 grand. Will you guys throw it? Nothing. Crickets. Because he's raising money to put in his pocket. At the end of the day, that's all he's doing. And if that's fine, if you want to give him money to go in his pocket, that's great. But you don't get to sit there and criticize other people who are trying to do the work, like in the trenches, doing the work, and then sit there and then blast us for doing the work that you've never done. Nobody sees Kevin Starrett in the lobby halls. There isn't a legislator. I don't know a legislator except for maybe James Heeb or Dwayne Yunker that get a call from Kevin Starrett on the House side that says, hey, I got an idea for you on guns. He's not trying to lobby to fix things. No, he's just bomb throwing, and it's worthless. All right, I'm done.
Well, Bryan, I was also looking at, because I wanted to see these numbers you were talking about, 2022, the year of Measure 114 on the ballot, raised $78,000 that year. He had already had 100 on hand, so his basically available money was right around 200 grand, and his ending cash balance was $130,000. And like you were saying, you looked at the individual expenditures and he only spent half of that money that he actually spent on defeating Measure 114. Then you go back, and I was looking through every year, because you can click all the way back to like 2011 or something like that. Every year since he started, his fundraising went up and his expenditures would go up. I think because at that time he was raising the money and spending it and working on this. And then right around 2018, the fundraising goes up, but the spending just craters, except for that 1 year where he spends 2019 $368, like you said, emptying the campaign accounts into the dark money, basically, right? And from that point on, he's sitting on a lot of money, and he's not apparently spending it on gun issues, and not for candidates either. He likes to attack candidates in his newsletters for taking his money and then disagreeing with him. I don't know who is taking his money at this point. He's not sending any out the door. So I think that's what really disappoints me about politics, Bryan, when you have people who've worked in it for a long time who kind of lose their way, who maybe started on the right path and then get too focused on themselves, right? Because really the ultimate outcome's got to be what's best for gun owners in the state. And attacking the votes that we need to block guns is not the answer. That's why I have this PAC now that maybe people have heard of, Oregon Gun Rights. I'm a director on that PAC. We haven't raised any money, but we will this summer. And we're going to spend it for candidates, and we're going to spend it talking to voters, and we're going to spend it building a list of gun owners. And we're going to send out, you can go to OregonGunRights.org and you can see that we've endorsed candidates because that's a need now. Because Oregon Firearms Federation isn't doing it, I think somebody should do it. And so I don't mean to turn this into a promotional thing, but go to OregonGunRights.org and see, we pick some candidates. Send me an email. I usually respond unless you're being mean. I'll tell you why we endorsed somebody and didn't endorse another person, right? And I've got some helpers that are on the ground talking to people, getting the information about who's going to be most effective and all that. Appreciate you sharing that, Bryan, because I think it's important that somebody say it.
I think that, and there's other groups out there. I mean, Kevin Starrett doesn't get to own the Second Amendment space. It's not his. It doesn't work that way at all. Like you don't get to just say, I was here first, so therefore it's my space. that I'm living in. And there's Gun Owners of America that has done tons on that measure of 114. They've been out there for a long time. They're advocating in this space. I think, an NRA, of course, he hates the NRA now because, they gave good ratings to some Republicans that he disagrees with, which I don't know. I mean, there's one or two probably Republicans that are probably shaky on guns. But the reality is they're 99% in agreement, I would say, for the most part, across the board on where Kevin Starrett is. And I just don't know where the anger and all of that comes from, because it's all it is. It's just anger for the sake of anger. And the only thing I can think of is because that anger creates fundraising. And that's the only reason why, because it creates emotion that creates fundraising. And that's why he does it. And I don't know, but I don't know what he's doing with it, because he's not advocating for better gun rights in Oregon. He's not putting it. I haven't seen anything that it's going towards except for maybe his mortgage payment at this point. So we can probably move on from that. I'm sure I will get blasted, and you will get blasted in his next newsletter over it, which I do find hilarious. When he puts them out, because I don't really care at this point. He knows where he stands. He tried to put out and I'll end on this, because this is probably what really chaps my hide about him, regardless of the local stuff. He put out, and he didn't even do a candidate endorsement notice that went out to candidates this time. Didn't even put it out, because last time he tried putting it out to people that were running for the Republican nominations, and all he cared about is that he would change leaders. That was his sole reason for getting endorsements. And then every one of those people that said that they would, we went and defeated them in primaries. And I pissed him off for that. And I will continue to do it. And I will do it. So if you take an off endorsement and you take money from off and you're going up against me in a primary, you better bring your A game, because I'm going to whoop some ass. That's all I'm saying there. And I'll leave it at that. Challenge thrown.
Bryan, in the last couple of years that we become friends, I've learned the number one rule is do not mess with Brian Iverson. I think it'd be okay too if Starrett was out there saying this candidate's better on guns than this one because of XYZ reasons. Like, you could have reasons.
Yes.
All these groups endorse and they say we prefer this person to this person or whatever. But to skip all these races, to say all these people that will totally vote fine on guns suck, is not true. It's just not true. That is, Brian, that's the definition of misinformation.
Yeah, I
think it's just ridiculous.
If you come out with your own scorecard, if you don't like the NRA scorecard, come out, do something like inform voters with the money that you're stuck away in some dark money 501c4 that you're supposed to do with it. Inform them. And if that information is that, Charlie Conrad's horrible on guns and he sucks, and therefore you should vote for Darren Harbick or, whatever, that's fine with me. And I think that's kind of what your goal is with Oregon gun rights, was to let's just start shedding some light on some of this stuff and start advocating in one of the spaces that truly the state, because Measure 114 came down to 0.14% or something. So it's truly a split issue in Oregon, and it could be a winning issue for Republicans, but the Democrats have taken the issue because of people like Kevin Starrett, and they've turned it into us being super extreme Republicans, because then they just point to the blasphemy that he throws out there. That's how we get labeled. And that doesn't really help us. That's not helping the cause of Second Amendment rights. I truly believe that.
Well, Brian, to leave off on that one, do you have any other topics you want to cover today? We've had some long episodes, so I'm wondering if we want to leave them with a short one.
We can leave it on this one, because I think I probably went off enough. I don't know. We might have to go back and re-listen to it before we release it.
I'll send you the edited version, Brian. You can tell me what you think.
Hey, political speech is free speech in my mind. If they can blast me and they can blast my wife all day long and they can blast the people that I love and care about and work for, then if they can dish it, they better learn to take it. And I think that's the reality of this game. If you want to step into the arena, and if you step into the political arena, you are open for attack. You knew this when you stepped in the arena with your dad being a senator. I knew this when I stepped into the arena with my wife being in politics. I understand it. I know that it comes with the territory. And if you are somebody who steps into the political arena and you want to fight and throw bombs, you got to grow some thick skin. You got to grow the fact that people aren't going to like you. It is the reality of it. I've lost friends in Crook County because I went and flipped the school board, and they thought they were my friend, and then now they're pissed at me because I threw out some people they liked on the school board to other people that I thought would better run the school, in my opinion. So I went and helped them, and we did that. So I don't know why you're upset with me. You obviously didn't donate your money to the other people, and they lost. So if you're going to step in the arena, you got to know that comes with the territory. And I understand it, and it's okay.
I think that's right, Brian. But you said one key thing there that some people get wrong. You have to step into the arena. When I decided, I wasn't in the arena because I'm the son of a state senator. I'm in the arena because I decided to get involved in politics. If you are, related to a family member or whatever, and you don't actually step into the arena, I think personally, Brian, that person's off limits, right? I think at very rare circumstances does that. But if you get involved in policymaking, you get involved in campaigns, you get involved. Now you've stepped into the arena. Now it's all fair game, right? But if you don't actually step into the arena, I have a problem when people go after family members, go after personal situations, stuff that isn't relevant, right? And I think that line can always be a little bit hard, but sometimes it's obvious when you cross it. And I think that, people need to be careful and think through all those decisions. Because, again, like you said, in the arena, we should fight. But outside the arena, we got to respect people as people.
No, I think you got a good point there. My son was victim of that. He has nothing to do with politics, but somebody likes to take him being dumb and blowing it up into, something more. It'd be kind of like somebody attacking your brother, right? Who has nothing to do with politics. He's not in the political space. He's not in the theater at all. And he gets a, what do they call that? He gets whacked with some shrapnel for no reason, right? For just literally being the son of your dad. And he's not in the arena at all. He has nothing to do with politics. So there's definitely that. But I think the people that have stepped in, like Kevin Starrett, they love to dish it, but they sure hate to take it. And I think that's the reality. And I think even for the race that I'm doing down south, Chris Goodwin's a good example. We ran a piece on Goodwin's opponent, Robinson. And Noah Robinson was upset that we put his dad in there, who's a sitting state senator, and his brother who ran for Congress. He said, well, they're not political figures. And I just said, I beg to differ. Your brother ran for office and your dad's a senator and you're running to be a senator. That doesn't get more political than that. So sorry, you don't get it both ways. You don't get to sit there and lob bombs against my opponent and me not fire back. That's just what's going to happen. And I always say this way, you drew first blood in my rainbow terms.
Before we leave, I just want to do a little bit of self-promotion for us. Visit crosstabs.studio. That's where you find all the information about the podcast. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or app. We also have Predict Oregon's May primary election.
Follow me on Twitter, Brian G. Iverson on Twitter. That's my only social I do anymore. I don't really do Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff because I don't know. I can only do one thing at a time. I'm too old to do 3 different social media stuff, let alone I heard there's like 17 or something my kids are on, but I don't go there. I just do Twitter. That's where you'll find me. And thanks, Reagan. I do appreciate this episode of kind of going back at some of this stuff and really kind of clarifying some of the things with PAC stuff. And I really look forward to dissecting these primaries. I think that's going to be kind of fun. That might even take 2 episodes. We might have to do an A and a B or something, depending on how close things are. So
there were a ton of races that we covered in our preview, so it'll probably take us a few episodes to get through them. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you. Appreciate your view of the world and the hot takes that you always bring, because you're always bringing the hot takes, telling people like it is.